Hello and welcome to another edition of the E-commerce Odyssey podcast. I'm here with Matt Edmundson from Aurion. Aurion is an e-commerce services company, and I believe also Matt does a lot of coaching. So Matt, would you like to tell us about yourself and how you got into this business?
Yeah, hi Trevor. Thanks for having me on the show. Well, how did I get into e-commerce? The answer is by accident. It was never by design. We just sort of stumbled into it back in 2002, so a very long time ago now in digital years. We did, I just sort of launched my own business back then, and we were one of our little side hustles was to do websites for small businesses. And it's very early on in the internet, and I'd heard, stories about e-commerce and people selling stuff. And so I thought, well, how hard can it be? Let's write a little bit of code and write a little web store. And so I contacted a friend of mine who was selling. We were already buying stuff from him to sell to other people. And I said, do you mind if I just sell this stuff online? He said, no, not at all. And we just put it on the website. Actually, 6 months later, he purchased that website from me. So that was the first e-commerce business, and it was a successful exit and sale. So, I should have retired then.
2002, I'm trying to, what was available? So how were you, because I'm interested, how were you taking payment in 2002?
It was fascinating. Back then, people would just put the credit card details into the system, and, you would key them into a machine.
Oh, and then you just rekey it onto a terminal. I don't know if you've been watching Pam and Tommy, about the Pam and Tommy sex video.
Okay.
Yeah, well, there's a TV show about that, and the whole thing about that is, it was one of the first things that people sold on the internet in a way. Mm-hmm. And so it's this, this whole thing, and someone going, where can we sell this? And they go, we can sell it on a website. And just what's a website?
Yeah.
And it's just, and there's people, bringing up these very, very primitive looking websites, and then you send them a check and they send you a video back, and those were the days, weren't they?
Well, people used to send us checks all the time. People used to fax orders in. I mean, it was just crazy, some of the ways that we would do it. But yeah, you're right. It's very different now. I mean, you wouldn't get away with half the things that we did back then. You wouldn't be able to do it. Security would be a massive issue. But yeah, back then everyone seemed to be willing to throw
all the criminals have got more sophisticated as well. Unfortunately, they know how to. So basically, tell me. So after that, how did you after your first business? What happened then?
So we kind of dabbled in e-commerce. It wasn't websites and e-commerce wasn't my primary business. It was just one of these sort of side hustles. My actual primary business, believe it or not, was health spas. So I would design saunas and steam rooms and health spas and all that sort of stuff. And thoroughly enjoyed that as my main job. And we had this sort of side hustle where we did the websites, which just grew and grew and grew. And then in 2006, we launched a website called Jersey Beauty Company. That was a friend of mine on the island of Jersey who I knew from the health club days, so doing the health spas. And he said to me, Matt, what should we do with our gyms? Had a couple of gyms on Jersey, and we're like, man, Jersey has, at the time, they had such a strange quirk in their tax laws, which meant that if you shipped anything that was like, I can't remember the exact figure, Trevor, but it was something like 22 quid or something like that, 22 pounds, $30. If you shipped a product that was under 22 pounds from Jersey, you didn't have to charge VAT. And this meant that, you could be 20% cheaper than a UK competitor and still make the same profit margin.
Yeah.
It was a really odd quirk at the time. It's not available now, but it was back then.
Play.com, there was a whole lot of businesses like CD Now and Play.com. They were all running out of Jersey.
Exactly. Because if you think about it, that it was the ideal price. What could you sell 20 quid or under? Well, you could sell DVDs, you could sell CDs, those kind of things back then, and make some good profits on those. And so I said to Andy, you've got this tax law, you may as well take advantage of it. And so we were like, well, what do we sell? And he basically, you look around the health club, what have you got? Well, you've got weights, skipping ropes, not really that interesting to sell online. But what he did have was some professional skincare brands, because he had a couple of beauty rooms in his health club. And so we threw those online, and we launched the site August 2006. And I remember having this real clear conversation with Andy saying, listen, if we can sell like 10 grand's worth of product between now and the end of the year, we are more than on track. We are more than on target. Do you know what I mean? That was what our research came up with, was sort of £10,000. And that was our target. That was our aim. But we didn't sell 10 grand's worth of products by the end of 2006. We actually sold £400,000 worth of product. And so it just instantly took off. It just went crazy and nuts. And it was, in some respects, it's some of the most exciting times as an entrepreneur, is actually figuring out how to deal with rapid growth, you know, from 0 to millions in quite a short time frame. And what that means, because, you know, if you sell one parcel, you can go down the post office and send that out yourself, can't you? But all of a sudden, if you've got 100 to ship out, but you've not got an account with the Royal Mail, well, the post office don't like it when you walk in, stand in the queue with bags and bags of parcels. But that's what we had to do in the early years. But yeah, that was 2006, and we've kind of, you know, we got a little bit more serious when things started to get serious with Jersey, and e-commerce then became our main thing.
So now, do you run any e-commerce business anymore, or is it all coaching?
No, we run e-commerce businesses at the moment. We sold Jersey, that company I was telling you about, we started in 2006. That was sold last year to Gorgeous Retail Group. So they've purchased that, doing great things with Jersey now. I focus on a health supplement company now, is one of my key focuses. So we sell vitamins, you know, like omega-3, VegVit and all that sort of stuff. And the company specializes in the vegan certificate. So all the products are vegan certified and vegetarian society certified. And so, you know, even you don't have to be a vegan to take them, obviously, but that was a very niche market when we started with that a few years ago. And that market has now grown and grown and grown over the years. So that's quite a successful business.
Are you a vegan yourself?
If I'm honest, no. I'm not. I do like my meat. I'm not going to lie. I'm much more aware of the meat that I eat, actually, working in this industry. But no, I'm not a vegan.
I think being a vegan is very commendable, but it's not for me.
Yeah, and you know what? I get it. I get the draw of it. I get the lifestyle choice of it. I get the health benefits of it. But I think. And I get the principle, you know, I get why people are against meat. And so I think if you have a vegan or vegetarian diet, there are consequences to that, which is why I think, you know, we've done well with the supplements and how we've brought that into the market and targeted it.
Okay. So tell me about your experience of selling Jersey Beauty. How did you go about that?
It started during the pandemic. You know, we'd been running Jersey for about 15, 16 years. Andy, my business partner from Jersey, and I we'd been together a while, and we just thought, just wonder if it's coming to a natural end for us, you know, having done it for 15 years. Is it now time to hand the reins on to somebody else? Have we taken this as far as we could take it, was one of the questions that we were asking. And we weren't. I'd made sort of tentative inquiries about selling. I'd talked to a few brokers. I spoke to our accountant about the whole idea. Never really sort of came up with a plan. And then just sort of, it's funny, isn't it? Just how when you start to align yourself with things like that, then out of the blue, people started to contact me. And so we had 2 or 3 people contact us about buying the company, one of which was Gorgeous Retail Group. And so this sort of very small idea in the back of my head started to gather steam quite quickly when these guys got a bit more serious in terms of looking at the business and made an offer that we thought, actually, this is a fairly reasonable offer. And so, yeah, so we thought, you know what, it's probably about time.
Did you go to, because I know my experience of talking to business brokers is, I mean, depending, I don't know how much you sold your business for, but they're a little bit like estate agents. I don't know, maybe just the people I talk to. But
yeah, I think it's a good way to think about them. And I think the good thing about broker, we didn't sell our business through a broker in the end. And partly because we were approached by the person that was buying it. We didn't need to. But yeah. I understand why people want to use brokers, because finding, I suppose in hindsight, we could have still used a brokerage service. Maybe there were people out there who would have been willing to pay more for the business. I don't know. We weren't that bothered by that, because we're like, well, no, here's an offer that we're willing to accept. This is, why torture myself to see if it could be any better? But we could have used a broker, and I do know a few good e-commerce brokers, and we have worked with a couple with clients over the years. And I think where they help you, if I'm honest, where I think they help you is within documentation and with the legal side. So not only can they find people that buy your business, they can help you get your business ready to sell. And that was the bit that was surprising for me in terms of when it came to selling our business, was just the sheer colossal amount of paperwork that was required from my point of view. And when you run your own business, there's a lot of assumptions that you make. There's a lot of things you kind of take for granted as you go along. But actually, that people can't buy assumptions. Do you know what I mean? They have to really clearly know what it is they're buying, and you have to really clearly be able to articulate that. So, for example, what is your IP? Because part of the buying process is they're buying the IP. Well, what's with the company? What's with just me? Do you know what I mean? There's a whole series of things that I'd never really thought through.
Did you get that? Was it like they just paid cash and you walked away, or was there any kind of, were you tied in for any period of time? How was it structured?
It was a very simple structure compared to a lot of structures going on. And inevitably you are tied in some way, I think, to most sales. You fortunately for me and the guys that have bought it, we've gotten very well since the purchase. And so I think there is always that element of tie-in with a sale. And so that is always something to think about. Can you work with the people that are buying this business from you? Can you cope with what's going on, in a business which you have spent years building, yes or no? And you have no real control over that. So it is a very serious question to answer.
So is it okay, I'm just trying to get some clever questions to ask you. What kind of multiple do you think that people should aim for? Or what is a reasonable multiple of profit, a multiple of turnover?
I think it depends greatly on who's buying your business as to how you value it. So if for example, you take, I can't tell you about the beauty business because there's all kinds of confidentiality documents, but I'm talking,
I think broad brushes.
Broad brushes. I think if you're selling a product, like, I have a Lego Indiana Jones here. If I'm selling a Lego Indiana Jones and, I want to sell that product-based business, I think probably somewhere between 3 to 5x on your profits is probably about reasonable. I know that there's big talks about 16x multiples, and I think they're very few and far between, but I think probably around 3 to 5. I think if you've got a subscription-based business, then that value goes around twice that, maybe about 6 to 8 times profits. Yeah. Subscription businesses are always much more easy to sell. But then again, think about who's going to buy. And part of selling is understanding the buyer. So if I sell Lego Indiana Jones and I ship those from a warehouse and the company has to pay a lease on that warehouse and it's got a whole bunch of staff, then the person buying the company, are they buying the warehouse? Are they buying all the staff? Is that good to them? Is that bad to them? Or am I selling it over here to a competitor that's already got all of that? In which case they're not so bothered about, say, net profits because they don't want the warehouse. They don't want the staff. What these guys want over here is the website. They want the database. Well, for those guys over there, gross profits become much more interesting. And I think your business becomes much more valuable. Does that make sense? So
yeah, absolutely. So it's as a particular word for it. Anyway, so you just strip out, if you can strip out the costs and say, look, you guys don't have to take these costs on, and therefore you need to value the profit in this different way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've certainly heard that.
Yeah, and that works if you understand who is buying your business, and what what's the value to them as a person. And I think people always shudder at the idea of selling to a competitor, because they're going to have to do due diligence. They're going to have to go through your business with a fine tooth comb. And so there is a lot of risk involved in selling to a competitor, because they are going to, they're basically going to go up one trouser leg and down the other, for want of a better expression. They're going to want to get to know you. And so that makes a lot of people nervous. But I think there are potentially a bigger rewards if you do.
Okay. So do you focus these days on coaching then, or what's your main business these days?
Yeah, I split my time like most people. So I do a lot of coaching, a lot of consulting, which I absolutely adore and love. We do a lot of content creation, like yourself. We, with a podcast, which is just fantastic, and networking with folks. And then obviously we've got our own e-commerce businesses as well, which I also like to still dabble in, and I think I still bring value to what we do. So I sort of split my time across those things.
Okay. So what kind of on your coaching side of things, how do you, what kind of people do you work with? Is it beginners? Is it people looking to grow their businesses?
We don't tend to work with startups, if I'm honest, mainly because of costs. Having a coach is quite costly. Certainly, we're not cheap. I'll be, totally straight. We're not cheap, but I think partly because of the value that we bring. That said, we do some stuff with startups, but I just don't charge for it. We do help startups every now and again. But I tend to work with businesses that are turning over anywhere from around 2 million upwards, really. And they're looking to grow their e-commerce business. And where it works super well is, I found, for me, coaching businesses where e-commerce is part of their company, but it's not the whole part of their company. Mm-hmm. So, for example, we've worked with pharmaceutical companies, for example, who have an e-commerce website. Their business is doing okay. They know it could be a lot more than what it is. But their main industry over here is what they want to focus on. And so that they're like, come help us build team, get things established here on the e-commerce side of things. We just don't know, but we know enough to get somebody like you to come help us do that. It's going to be much quicker and better. And so we tend to work very well with companies like that. Mm-hmm.
So how do you start? I mean, do you have courses you sell, or is it just you charge by the hour, or is it a program, or?
Great question. Yeah.
I've got quite into kind of looking at people. You've got people who run kind of YouTube channels, and then they do kind of cohort courses and stuff like that. There's loads of I think that a lot of people are launching courses these days.
I'm a big fan of them. I think it's a great way to get people connected in with what you're doing so we have a course which we put out at the end of 2021. And funnily enough, I was talking to the team this morning. All of them are getting revamped this year. We're going to do them all again. And I do enjoy doing the courses. Obviously, there's a revenue which comes from them, which is, we're a business, we've got to make money with what's going on. So we do sell them. But they're a great way for people who are starting out and who are learning to get, inside your head, to get to know what you know, and in a way that's going to help them, who wouldn't ordinarily be able to afford the $2,000 a day consulting fee. It's just not possible. So yeah, we do the courses. I'm a big fan of them. And it enables you to reach a much wider audience with a much greater span, albeit at a much lower unit sale price. But I think it's great. And I think there's still a lot to be said for courses. And I still think there's a lot of opportunity in there for people to do them.
Mm-hmm. So with your business, your e-commerce business, I mean, I find that everyone has their thing, right? So my thing is marketplaces, right? And, when you ask me what's the solution, I think about like going, yeah, marketplaces. I think, and what's your solution to every problem when it comes to e-commerce? What's your favorite solution?
My favorite solution, we have something which we've affectionately called toilet seat marketing or toilet seat thinking. And so you can't see it, Trevor, and I won't bore you. Well, I suppose I could here. Hang on. I always have by the side of my desk an actual toilet seat. So if you're watching this,
God, you're pretty serious about this, aren't you?
Yeah. And and the reason I do that, and the reason why if I'm coaching clients, I've done presentations before where I've sent everybody a toilet seat, and I suggest that they sit on it while we do the presentation, just to help them sort of think this idea through. And it's a very simple idea. It's been around for thousands of years, this whole concept, and it's based on the notion that actually it's based on a story a friend of mine told me. I actually stole it off him, if I'm honest with you, but it's a great idea. He told me this story when he was at college. He used to clean toilet stalls for a living, right? That's what he did. You clean it. And so if you picture in your head cleaning a toilet stall, you open the door, you clean the walls, you clean the bog, and away you go, right? Job's done. But Rich always used to win the award for having the cleanest toilets. How do you get that? How do you consistently, week in, week out, win the award for having the cleanest toilets? Doesn't sound exciting, doesn't sound exhilarating, but he did it. And people were curious as to know how he did it versus the other cleaners who were cleaning toilet stalls. Why did they never, ever get the feedback that Rich got? And he said, and I'll never forget it, he said, well, there's a reason for this. And he showed you, and he kind of, if you picture going into a toilet store, you clean the walls, you clean the toilet. Then what Rich did, which nobody else did, was he turned around and he sat on the toilet. And he said, interestingly, from that position, you have the most important perspective, which is the perspective of the user.
Right, yeah.
And then he said, so I clean the toilet from that position as well. That's all he did, right? He just turned around. And I think as business people, we're so used to seeing our businesses from one perspective, which is our perspective, the business perspective, the perspective of opening the door, which is good and right, and we shouldn't ignore it. But we also need to turn around and sit down on the toilet and see what is the perspective from our users as well, and look at it from both sides. And I think this very simple principle of treat others the same way that you would want to be treated is just so simple and so beautiful and so wonderful that I think it solves just about every single problem out there.
Especially wow your customers, basically.
It's not even to wow them, it's to just deliver a great experience. And I think whenever we do the presentation, there's a sort of second phase to this. We call it the sink, which is where you do deliver the wow. Actually, washing your hands is part of the whole experience, but it's something which is unsaid or unthought. And so the great example for us was when we did this in Jersey. We looked at, you can look at every part of your e-commerce business, but we picked on one specific area, which was fulfillment. And we were like, what's it like when somebody receives a parcel from us? What do our customers actually think? I know what I think from my perspective. Is it cheap? Is it quick? And is it reliable?
Yeah.
Am I going to get any returns? But from a customer perspective, and so we started to, we figured out that what the customer wanted, buying skincare. If you think about buying skincare, professional skincare, the average order value was around 60 to 70 pounds per order. That's a lot of money on moisturizer, right? And it was something that would ordinarily have been alien to me because I personally wouldn't have done it. So when we sent stuff out, it's very utilitarian. And we were thinking, well, man, if you're spending 70 quid on some product, you're buying more than just the professional skincare. You're buying a gift for yourself. And when we did the research, this is what we discovered, that people were treating themselves. Do you know what I mean? This was like a special occasion for them. So all we did two things, Trevor. Number one was we changed the way the cardboard box was created. So you had to open an extra flap, which made it feel like you were unwrapping a gift, right? And we printed nice messages on the inside of the box, you know, how amazing people were, how beautiful they were, and so on and so forth. And then inside that, there was a little bit of tissue paper, which you then had to unravel. Okay. So the extra bit of cardboard and the tissue paper added like 1 or 2 pence per order. So from a cost point of view, we're okay. The second thing we did was we thought, well, we understand that the customer wants a gift, but we also understand from a business perspective, part of our values are fun. We like to do things which are a bit fun. So how do we bring the two things together? And so we replaced our packaging material. So we took out, the big plastic bubbles that people use. We were using those at the time. We took them out and we replaced them with popcorn. And so,
like just foodie popcorn.
Yeah, just
and then make
ordinary
an awful
popcorn.
Mess.
No, not at all. Not at all. We had machines in our warehouse which were just 24/7, just producing popcorn. The whole warehouse smelled like popcorn. I mean, we had to try. There was a science behind it, Trevor. I'm not going to lie. We had to try all kinds of different popcorn to find the right popcorn. Obviously, we didn't coat it with butter or any of that kind of stuff. It was just raw popcorn. But popcorn, when you think about it, it is light. It's biodegradable, so it's good for the environment, very sustainable product. And it does actually protect the products. But it was also fun, which matched our values. But here was the thing. So we added an extra bit of cardboard, we added a bit of tissue paper, and we added popcorn. Before that point, nobody really had posted any pictures of our packaging on social media, unless for whatever reason, we'd done the Amazon thing where we'd sent a very small product in a very big box. And it was like, what a colossal waste. Do you know what I mean? People would post about that. But what we discovered was after we did that, everybody was posting pictures. They're like, man, look at this. It's come with popcorn. Do you know what I mean? And so customers started to feel like actually they were unraveling a gift. They were opening a gift, and a gift that had a little bit of fun attached to it with a popcorn. And it just that one change, just by understanding both perspectives, by sitting down on the toilet seat and understanding it from the user, we created an experience which didn't take a whole great deal to do once we'd got it all set up and established. But let me tell you, our repeat customer rate from that point on was noticeably higher. I mean, noticeably higher, well above industry average. And so it was great to see, and so this is my go-to, grab a toilet seat, sit on a toilet seat and think about life from the perspective of your user. Where does that marry and interact with what you're doing as a business? And how can I make that better? That solves every e-commerce problem just about in my mind.
Okay. So you've also got a podcast. Tell me about that. How did you get into podcasting?
Yeah. I think I got into podcasting like most people because I have an ego the size of a planet. And
what are you saying? What are you saying? What are you saying?
Maybe it's just me, Trevor. I don't know. I might be out on him. But I started a podcast, the e-commerce podcast, because I wanted to build a brand. I wanted people to know me a lot more than what they did. We were getting more into the course content. And so, to establish that, a podcast seemed like a good way to go. It was a bit more interesting for me than a blog because I'm not great at writing. I don't enjoy it as much, but, put me on the phone with somebody and I quite enjoy that, chatting
You like
away.
talking?
Oh, I love it. Yeah. I mean, obviously you do as well, and asking questions and doing the podcast. It's great.
I find actually it is good for meeting interesting people.
Yeah. That was when I started the podcast, we started it just because of fun, if I'm honest with you. And our first season was literally me talking about how to do e-commerce. And even I got bored with the sound of my own voice after season one. So after season one, it became like a chat show, like exactly what you're doing now as an interview. And I get to ask very interesting people some very, the questions which came into my head. And I found actually it was really good fun. And the networks and the contacts I've built as a result of that are just astounding. And, it's been wonderful. Yeah, I love it. Love it. In fact, this year, we are going to be doing more podcasts. So we have the e-commerce podcast, but we're going to be doing a sort of a more generic leadership style podcast, which is coming in the next month or two. But that whole podcast is going to be based more not on how to do leadership, but how to do the other side of leadership, like how to do family and run a company, how to be a dad and run a company, all the questions that I get asked on a lot of different podcasts, to be fair. So we're going to talk about that, how to deal with difficulties, et cetera, et cetera. So that's going to be super exciting. We've got a stories podcast coming. Yeah, I love it as a medium. I've fallen in love with it. And so, yeah, we're going to add another sort of 2 or 3 this year.
Cool. Gosh, there's a lot of podcasts. John, look, I've got one last question for you. Right, it's what I'll ask everyone. What has inspired you recently? Could be anything.
Honestly, as horrific as it sounds, the people of Ukraine. You can't look at what's going on in Ukraine and not be utterly inspired by the resolve of people, and actually the resolve of the human spirit, even from outside. A lot of the guests we've had on the show talking about it, and some of the stuff, hearing some of the stories that they're doing and how they can help people. We sponsor a charity called Vitamin Angels, a great charity through our health supplement business. And our account manager, she's first generation Ukrainian. She lives in the States. She's managed to go and get some containers of medical supplies and food, and she has had them shipped over to I can't remember if it's Poland or somewhere that borders Ukraine, and she's taken them across the border herself. And you hear all these amazing stories, the sort of the resolve and the human spirit of people to stand up to tyranny like that, I think is fantastic. So you've got to be inspired. You've got to be inspired by the stories that are coming out, and I think it's fantastic. I'm
just so horrified by it every day. I barely look. Just looking for my fingers. It's so horrifying. Oh, it is.
It is, and
so senseless.
It's
so
horrific.
Totally pointless. What is it achieving? Nothing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so on that cheerful note, it's been lovely speaking to you. And where can people find out more about you online?
Sure. The easiest thing to do is just head on over to mattedmundson.com. All my links are there. I'd love to connect with people, and say hi.
Great. Okay, check it out. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks, Trevor. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye-bye.